In our normal lives, when we read a new work, when we read a new poem or a poem we've not read before or a novel that's only just been published, we just simply accept that the book we have in our hands or what's on screen is the thing itself. We don't ask any problematic questions about that. Well, traditional bibliography forces us to ask questions as we start to compare those versions, because every variant reading begs the question, why is it variant? Who made the change? What do we think the justification or the reason for the change may have been? Now, that kind of empirical leverage allows you to open up larger questions, which traditional literary criticism forbids you from asking. So that study of versions is a methodology that asks questions. The very fact of this, what I'd call the bibliographical backbone of the life of a work, itself asks questions at every point along that backbone about the re-emergence of the work through publication aimed at a new audience. So in other words, textual studies is a study of that lifespan. It's based on the study of versions because we know that the text of each successive version is likely to change for various reasons in subtle or sometimes in major ways. In my paper yesterday I was talking about a sort of a sliding scale, or a slider really, as between the archive at the left-hand side across to the edition at the right-hand side, with various kinds of scholarly work populating that slider in between, and with the critical editions on the right-hand side being more reader-oriented and archives being more document or archive-oriented on the left-hand side. I talked about an archival impulse and an editorial impulse, because after all, the archive and the edition are on the same slider. They're related to one another. It often will be the same person who's performing both functions. In creating the archive, that archival impulse, as I wanted to call it, is dominant, whereas over here the editorial impulse comes far more into play, because after all, editions are finally for readers and need to be reader-facing. Archives, if they're to be usable for many purposes, need to be document-facing. So in practice, what form will the edition take, given that an archive will have been created for the particular project in the first place? Also, what I'm envisaging is that the archive will basically always be in this relationship to the edition, so that the edition simply becomes an analysis of, or an argument about, that data that the archive contains. So really the archive and edition, they're joined at the hip, but the edition is an argument, or really an embodied argument about the data in the archive. In practical terms then, the reading text will simply become another version that is being stored and is subject to analysis. Around that reading text, of course, will be the traditional commentary. One would hope that the editorial responsibility, now being relieved of the archival burden that it always had to bear in print forms, will allow the editor a freer rein to reflect in more analytical and often and even literary critical ways about that reading text and about the versions that it either embodies or that lay behind it. So I'm envisaging a newer form of editorial activity. Now that is something that I couldn't envisage in print form. It was simply not sensible to use literary critical methods in a printed edition that was designed to last for 100 years.